check
Of course.
your social media platforms and all that, I think you're one brave person who can actually come to terms and really dig deep into this issue. Is marriage a developmental issue or not?
Marriage, as we know it, wasn't always a developmental issue. Well, actually, growing up, being Black people, I would think it would have been a developmental issue because the institution of marriage was to give status to some families. And it seemed like a better, also economic choice for some families, because some families had a preference as to where you would get married. And
I mean,
nowadays, hello?
yeah, go on.
Okay. And marriage as an institution would bring certain families together. Like if you come from a poorer family and you're you have plans for your son to marry into maybe a family that's better off, maybe it worked out better in that way. But now people are more liberal in their choice, and people are finally questioning the institution of marriage. It's not a matter of now trying to sustain status, or it's not a matter of trying to just unite with a certain family. I think now we are starting to understand that there are certain components that should be involved in marriage. First of all, love
Mhm.
and respect.
When you speak of love, KD, you're the first on this conversation the whole week. Everybody else was talking about all the other variables except love. We
Yeah,
even tried to squeeze the sexual part of it in, but in the African context, it's like those things are really stuff that it's taboo. We don't really want to get into that. Don't get married for
yeah,
love. You hear our elders saying, get married to a person who give you a stable life or a stable income. And while I'm saying this, I want to hear from you clearly. If you people who are coming from out of Africa, when they come into Africa, they want to retain a conservative view of the African culture and its practices. And we who
yeah,
are from Africa here, we are trying to move. While we say we're being liberal, we're trying to go the European route,
yeah,
as if we're moving the cultural aspects of our own culture when it comes to marriages and weddings in particular
yeah,
to a more
yeah.
European, Eurocentric kind of position.
hmm I agree with you there. I mean, Africans do have their own practice, and this is where privilege really comes in, which is also an uncomfortable topic for us as Africans. Just because we are privileged, it doesn't necessarily mean that our practices are invalid. For example, polygamy. Polygamy is not new to Africans.
Yes.
Now, I don't agree with it because I'm me, because I am the jealous type, because I don't see myself sharing my husband with another woman.
Okay.
Definitely not. It doesn't work for me because I'm that person. And I don't agree with it because, as a woman, personally for me, I find it offensive that women should be seen as objects because the perception around polygamy is that women are objects, or it some women see it as objectifying, which is how I see it. But I'm very careful to be public about that view because that is not necessarily the case. For some
Okay.
women, it's a better arrangement, it's a good arrangement. And the way polygamy is viewed, it is not viewed as cheating. It's viewed as cohabiting with a group of women, and you happen to love one man, and this man is your provider, and if he gives you stability and love and gives you your respect as his woman in his own right, then some women don't mind it,
Mm.
which
You
is
see that?
where I
Don't you think?
also feel my
Uh,
feminism, which is where
yes.
I feel my feminism, I've even had to redefine what feminism is to me.
All right.
My
How do you?
feminism goes as far as being supportive of women's choices, whether it supports, as long as the woman is happy and is not objectified and does not feel objectified,
But don't you
then
think?
I'm good.
Kedi, from what you're saying already, with this text just being thrown around these days, you sound sexist when you cite that as long as the woman is happy, because we also have to consider the men have to be happy for a marriage to work. Also, it's like both parties have got an equal
But there's nothing when it
among other
comes
things.
to, yes, but when it comes to Africanism, unfortunately, women are always in the back burner. It's not a matter of, what's the word? It's not a matter of being sexist. It's a matter of frame of reference.
Okay.
As an observer, as someone who has observed what women go through in marriage, how we are groomed for marriage,
Mhm.
how we are taught in terms of catering to a man, giving a man's need, then you might as well argue that our upbringing in itself is sexist.
Okay, how do we strike this balance? Because from where I'm sitting now, I hear that approach and that viewpoint as progressive. But at the same time, are we not being hypocritical? If because I'm going to throw a question to you quickly on how you
Mhm.
view stuff like lobola, the payment of lobola, the bride price.
Yes.
How do we accept this part of the culture and reject the other while they're all the same? Because when I'm paying lobola, don't you think in a way I'm already objectifying you in a way?
No, not necessarily. Again, it goes back to redefining. Africans need to redefine for themselves what these concepts mean. And we are growing, unfortunately, which is, I think, a lot. This is why I think we as young people are on your show to redefine.
But here's my
There's no,
problem, and this is not for you only. If you would really be able to demystify this concept for me, I would be glad. Here's the issue: I'm in varsity and I'm 23 years old, right? And then I meet you,
yes,
and we fall in love head over heels. I want to marry this girl. I buy an expensive ring from my payout or my stipend money or wherever I get the money from, just to make sure
yes,
I engage. Nah.
yes.
Fast forward 3 years later, I come to your house to say, okay, I'm coming to do the African thing. The African thing is I've got to come up with cows. I mean, eight,
Uh-huh.
10, 12, depending on where would I have gotten those cows? Remember, we're just coming from school or varsity, and we're probably getting a new mortgage. We have to get a house after we get married. And there is an expected indulgence on weddings, African weddings, like people have to eat and drink and dine, you transport families. Don't you think this whole issue where when we cross the line into the marriage from the wedding side, we become liberal? How are we going to be able to say, okay, this is the line we draw? From the wedding going forward, we are liberal and Eurocentric, but before the wedding, when it concerns the guy, we want to stay cultural until I am milked of the last cent I had in my pocket from my first earnings and savings.
Good question, Paul. Now, going back to us wanting to go back in culture and people now wanting to divert, assuming I'm using that exact example between you and me, by the way, who is more
Hmm.
cultural? I just want to get a clear stance on that.
Between the two of us,
Yeah, who's the more liberal and who's the more cultural between you and me?
I think I want to think I am more liberal because I want to hear your views. And in my
Okay,
hope, I've been saying that culture has to evolve, but the evolution of culture should not be on the men's side only. The evolution of
okay.
culture should come from the men's family, the woman's family. Why am I saying the men's and the woman's family? In my understanding, when it comes to paying lobola, in the African culture, it is the father's responsibility to pay for his son's lobola because they assume that
Yes.
the father cows in his crow, so he's gonna lend me or give me as his namesake some cows to go and get a bride for myself. Already, when we
Yes.
say this, when we accept this, the father now has a say in my marriage, where I'm going to move with the bride and when. Stuff like having a
Yeah.
child and when, all these other dynamics, they become hands on.
Yes. But okay, so taking it then from a place where you are the liberal and I'm still coming from a cultural family with all these expectations, it's up to us as young people to actually sit each other down before we even take the step of marriage and discuss these issues. Because
Okay?
I'll make an example. If I'm Xhosa, I'm Sotho, half Sotho, half Xhosa.
Mhm.
If I decide to marry a white guy, sorry to make reference, but if I were to marry a white guy, obviously the prerequisite would be that he pays lobola for me.
Okay.
Now, it would still be my responsibility to let my parents know that, listen, he is of a different culture altogether. And
Mhm.
even if he were of the same culture and didn't want to pay ilobola, these are the other ways he would take care of me. If lobola is to display him taking care of me, there are other ways. We can get property. If he gets property for the two of us to live in, I don't see why my fiance would have to pay lobola.
Would you pay lobola for your boyfriend, for your fiance, or help him
No,
out?
no, no. But again, it goes back to we've got to make different choices to the ones our
Yeah.
parents made. The world is evolving.
Yes.
It's also our responsibility to teach our parents. They sent us to school for a reason, which is what I argue with my parents sometimes. You sent me to a white school. I'm not
Okay.
saying I'm here to change my culture, but what you gave me is you've given me an opportunity to apply my mind.
All right.
What is the point of me crippling my boyfriend who's just working? We still have to live in a house. We still have to make sure we're able to transport ourselves and the kids when we're going to have kids. You don't want me depending on you. So if you're going to cripple him with 350,000 Rand, where are we supposed to live? If
Well,
you're
that's
going to
going
ask
to.
him to pay 250,000 Rand, where are we going to live?
I think if I'm a woman, I'd pay for my guy's bride price when, if needs be, if he doesn't understand my culture, I'll be like, okay, you know what? For look of a better way, guy, dude, I'm gonna help us do this thing. Help you cross my cultural barrier, without infringing your rights. Because sometimes it's also mean to force someone to abide by your culture and things that they don't buy into. I think buying into you is enough, and just being in love with you is enough. Just a quick parting shot, KD, from you. What would you say to a girl child and a guy child growing today who are in their teens and they're coming from a different racial and cultural setup?
Ah, you know what? I would always, because I'm me, I would say get to know yourself.
Mhm.
Question your beliefs. Don't just follow blindly. I grew up in a very traditional family, and just like everybody else, obviously, there are values that I grew up with that I've had
Okay.
to learn to question. So don't follow your culture blindly because some things that have worked in the past may not apply to you now. There are certain reasons why certain things were done.
Mm.
And to keep saying certain things are European is also not fair because we are living in a very mixed world, and you have to find ways to get by. So
Yes.
don't be ignorant of the world you're living in. Understand that you're living with people in this world. You see, Africans, I'll make an example with Africans. Africans could still be as African as they want to be because there wasn't much of a mix then. We still had each other. Now we are pretty mixed. Some of
Mm.
us are scattered. Some of us have a new way of being. And what I love about the African culture is we are giving, we are loving, we have Ubuntu. That must never die, above all else.
Yes.
We have Ubuntu, we are giving, we are not murderers. I don't care who says Africans are murderers, we're not murderers. We help strangers.
Yes.
Your neighbor can never starve while you're around. Those are values that we should not lose.
Mm.
But when we talk about things like culture, culture evolves.
Oh.
So interrogate your beliefs. Don't just believe blindly and think that it applies to you because you've been told to believe a certain thing.